It's called Death by a Thousand Questions. And it was a reaction to agile coaches. So if there's any agile coaches or any leaders listening to this who encountered an agile coach, I would bet my bottom dollar that you've experienced death by a thousand questions, which is the coach sitting there, well, what do you think about this? And what do you think about, or have you thought about this? Or if that was a barnyard animal, if that problem was a barnyard animal, what kind of a barnyard animal would it be? Entry music, da 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 da. Dun, 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 dun. It's the Bob and Josh Show.
The topic today is challenging the age-old statement of there are no stupid questions. As Bob and I were talking, there are. And we're going to talk through those from a leadership lens. So this is, again, strictly from a leadership lens. As a leader, there are times where you can and likely have put your foot in your mouth by just continually asking questions. So Bob and I are going to talk through that, set you up with some tips and tricks and some awareness of what you may be doing that might be causing you some challenges.
And we want you to stop that. Yeah. Or we would like to inspire you to stop that.
Yeah.
So
I like that.
Where do we, how about I start, Josh, and then you accumulate. So one of the, and I don't know if these are stupid questions, but don't go to questions. I don't like the word stupid, but these are questions that do you harm. These are questions that can undermine your credibility. And as a leader, you need to care. I know you all, but you need to even amp up your caring about your credibility, because that's people's belief in you, belief in your ability to lead. So one of them is asking the same question. Rest his soul, Hank White was a CEO decades ago that I reported to as a VP of engineering. And Hank would ask me the same question. And it was like, how long is it going to take, Bob? And bless his little soul. And I would give him the answer to the best of my ability. And then he'd be like, but Bob, how long is it going to take?
That was the follow-up?
Yeah.
Wow.
No, this is just the beginning, Joshua. This is just the beginning. Because I'm standing up. I'm in his hallowed hall, the mahogany room. That's his office, because it was mahogany wood. The type of wood mattered back then for leaders.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, I just said it. Here's a little more nuance as to why. But Bob, sit down. Grab a chair. How long is it going to take?
So he's just continually trying to squeeze you?
Yeah.
Wow.
If I give you $1 gazillion on your bonus, how long's it going to? If I have dancing girls that come in here, how long is it going to take? And I'm like, Hank, read my lips.
Yeah.
And so I think one little narrow genre is, if you don't get the answer you want, asking the same question. So this is an extreme case, but I've seen a lot of leaders that they might change the nuance of it a little bit, but essentially they don't like the answer. So they feel like, to me, it's like death by a thousand questions. It's like, and at some point, leaders, Metacast listeners, something magical can happen. Not really good magic, bad magic can happen. People will give you, eventually you can wear them down and they'll give you the answer. And they're smart. They're smarter than you. They realize that you're just beating the crap out of them and you're asking it again, and they'll just give you your answer. There's no belief in it. It's not what you want. It's going to undermine your credibility outward. It's undermining their credibility, etc. But that's what's going to happen. But I thought I'd tee it up with something sort of simplistic like that, Josh. What do you think?
Yeah, that is frustrating. I've been in situations like that, and there was a person that I worked with that ended up being a peer of mine that was leading product at a company for a while, and that was the same approach. And the goal was, and it was the strangest thing, like I remember this crystal clear, where this person's goal, because they said it out loud in a leadership meeting, is I just want them to give me a number so I can hang it on them. So
Yeah, baby.
What do you mean? Like, yeah, I want to hang a number on them. Like, I want that. Like, I want it to like weigh them down and drag them. Like, it's gonna. Like, dear Lord, like that's the angle that we're looking at here. We are looking to put an unrealistic number on somebody and just watch them squirm and
And
crumble
hang it and hold them accountable to
yeah.
that till they die.
Yeah, and that was the whole mindset. And man, that was just challenging. And fast forward, we'll use a unit of measure of months, not years. That leader was gone.
Thank God.
Yeah. And it was because it had become this just whirlwind of blame and targeting, and it became less about getting the work done and more about a defense mechanism and like, how do I protect myself, because everybody was getting a number hung on them. And that was just like, holy crap, this was, and we had to have some interesting discussions, that person and I.
It's almost like weaponized curiosity to some degree, right? As you were talking, Josh, have you seen Yellowstone, the series Yellowstone?
I'm not.
You might, but what they do is they brand the Y on the ranch workers. They brand the Y onto them, like cattle brand, right?
Yeah.
Like burn them on their chest. As now you're on the ranch. Now you're a Yellowstone cowpoke or something.
All right, so we apologize if there's a little bit of choppiness in the episode. As Bob labeled it, we had a thought crack. So the editing is going to be interesting. I look forward to working on that later. But returning to the topic of, as Bob, and I like this term, Bob, it's good. The weaponized curiosity is good, because I've seen, and this is a relatively common thing that I've seen with like coaching roles, where I'm going to ask all the questions and all my questions are good and you're going to answer them and it's going to drive us forward. And in reality, it just drives people down a spiral and people get frustrated and they start to tune out. Very similar to the situation that Bob was talking about with, I think his name was Hank, if I remember. That was pre-thought crack.
Hank White, yes.
Yeah. So that's a thing, that to be aware of, every question isn't always adding value. In fact, it can start to detract over time and people will start to tune you out. So be thoughtful in how you use your questions. And most importantly, I mean, listen, everybody wants to help. Everybody is willing to, like, oh, wait a minute, Bob doesn't understand this. Let's stop everything and let's get Bob up to speed, because we know the value of having Bob up to speed is so tremendous. Let's make that happen. So people will always invest time in making sure that people have the context they need, the clarity that they need to do that. But you have a role in consuming and using that clarity and context that they're giving you, and not just like, well, I want to ask again, similar to Hank's of, well, when's it going to be done, Bob?
Well, there's the malicious question, or the, sort of subversive question, like Hank was doing that. You're trying to get to an answer. Another pattern maybe that I've seen is you're asking the wrong question. So, for example, if you're asking technical questions and they imply that you don't know what, so you're the VP of a technology group, and you have a technology stack, or you're doing some AI stuff, and you ask some questions that absolutely imply you're not paying attention. You don't know what you're talking about. And then you continue to ask those. So I think there's an appropriateness of the question. There's a relevancy of the question. And there's a connecting of the dots. And if you exceed that, it can undermine your credibility. I'm not saying you can't wave your hand and say, you know what, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about, Josh. The last program I coded in was COBOL, and we're not doing COBOL.
Right.
But I have a concern, and this is what it is related to the design, and it may or may not be relevant, but I have to ask it, and I need to understand, for me, what's going on. So can you help me to understand? I think what I did there is just preface it And so what I tried to role model is I went to maybe a good clueless question as opposed to just tell me more about it or I need to understand it, right? I need to understand that. And it's like it depends. And everyone in the room, if everyone in the room is thinking, well, damn it, you should understand it, and you haven't prefaced, then that's a problem. So I think you could lose. There's a relevancy to, and it's not just technology; it's business context. So what are some business context, domain context, customer awareness, technology stack awareness? Are some of these things that, as a leader, you have to be. I think you have to be careful or thoughtful. You can't just be clueless, and I mean that in the best possible way. I think it's better to shut up and not ask that question sometimes than it is to ask it. Now, probably not one if you have a good relationship, like if Josh builds great relationships in these roles, so he can get away with it. You can get away with some of those, but if you continuously do it, I've seen it really undermine your credibility. And then folks start tuning you out, I think, to some degree, or they start. I mean, they can tell you anything. They can give you like a Christopher
Yeah.
right? Well, Christopher Robin said that we should do this. Oh, really? Thank you for that. And then you start talking about poo. Poo at poo corners.
Yeah.
So you want to be careful. Josh, reactions to that?
It is, we've all had that frustrating leader where everybody in their room is thinking like, where have you been? Like,
Exactly.
we've been doing this for N number of months and we've been very transparent. We've had all of these discussions, all these meetings, everything that's going on. Like how is this like news or, all of those things. And maybe it's tuning out because you didn't want to hear it, kind of in the Hank mode. Or it's just you weren't paying attention. And so now maybe there's some additional pressure from somewhere else. You're like, oh, I got to go figure this out. And then it's clear that you've been asleep at the wheel for quite a while. Now, I'm going to assume that none of our listeners fall into that trap. None of our listeners have ever done that. Right, listeners and viewers? Right?
I'm not listening, Josh. Josh, what were you saying?
Yeah, like it's one of those things where it's like just pay attention.
There is you know what? There is like a pay attention thing. And what are some of the, you can be thinking about the next meeting? You can be waiting to make a point, so you're really not listening to the stuff. There's a variety of things that can be going around your head. You can have some personal issues on the table at home, etc. So, but paying attention. Another quick thought I had, Josh, I maybe related to this is, so the context here, Metacasters, is speaking in a group or leading a team or whatever. I've had trusted partners in the past as a leader. So instead of me asking that stupidish question or repetitively stupidest question, I'll run to Josh and I'm like, in a room, I'm like, Josh, I need your help. Am I off base or not? Is this a problem or not? And so I'm asking the question of someone I trust, someone who respects me, someone who understands where I'm coming from. I think that's a better approach. And then you can go back based on that information. If you want to follow up with the group, then follow up with the group. But have that sounding board. I usually have a sprinkling of, not too many of those folks, that I'm validating. And it's not just validating my questions, it's also validating my ideas that I want to put in front of the team. Before I pop like an idea in front of 800 engineers, I might bounce it off of Josh Anderson to see if it holds water, to see what the major issues are. So sounding boards are I think an important strategy to have, so that you're not just blindly asking questions.
Yeah, I have absolutely found myself in a situation where I've opted for that. And I've said it in front of the group. Like, okay, clearly I'm not getting this. What I'm not going to do is I'm not going to drag you all along with me while I figure this out. So me and Brent's going to go coach me up. And I'll come back next time ready to rock and roll. Sorry for the disruption, folks. That's on me. I will do better next time. And those are words I've said in meetings with like 100 people where something doesn't feel right. And I'm scratching my head. I'm trying to figure it out. But then I realized, wait a minute, I've got 100 people waiting and watching for me to figure this out. We have better things to do with our time. So let me go figure that out and I'll come back. And so it always, to Bob's point, there's a ton of value of like grabbing someone like Bob and like, Bob, listen, can we let's go to a whiteboard and I'll tell you what I think.
Yeah.
You can tell me where I'm wrong. And then we'll get on the same page and go. And so that's yeah, absolutely. I have been there.
Now, Josh just role modeled something, Medicast. There's another technique, which is what I would call the vulnerability technique or the backstory vulnerability technique, where he explains he's vulnerable. And I actually think if you have a stupid level question, but if you change the way you preface it, you can get away with that. Teams respect it. Like it's like saying, I don't know, right? Folks avoid saying, I don't know, like the plague. And just say, I don't know. I'll go find it out. Or I don't know. Can we take a little time to explain it to me? I think that level of leadership vulnerability bonds you to the team, right? Or they'll look over it. They won't have this negative connotation to the question.
Yeah. And this is a delicate topic because me as a leader, I aspire to build cultures where someone can raise a hand and say, wait, this doesn't feel right. I don't get it. Somebody get me up to speed. And what has to happen is the key word, up to speed, is you have to be like, boom, okay, I'm back in line with the crew. I got it. You do not want to create a culture where people are afraid to ask questions. So that is not what this episode is about. If you walk away from any part of this episode thinking, gosh, okay, questions are bad, you need to go back and re-listen and rewatch. We're not saying that. Questions are good. Repetitive questions where people are like, are you like paying attention? Do you get what we're saying?
Or context.
That's the problem.
And remembering the context that you're in. So repetitiveness, maliciousness, you want to stay away from those. Giving the context around questions. I wrote a blog, I don't know how long ago, and maybe I'll dig it up and we can provide a link to it. It's called Death by a Thousand Questions.
Yeah.
And it was a reaction to agile coaches. So if there's any agile coaches or any leaders listening to this who encountered an agile coach, I would bet my bottom dollar that you've experienced death by 1,000 questions, which is the coach sitting there, well, what do you think about this? And what do you think about, or have you thought about this? Or if that was a barnyard animal, if that problem was a barnyard animal, what kind of a barnyard animal would it be?
Yeah.
Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And at some point, I've been sitting there and I'm like, if you ask me one more question, I'm going to fire you. Either my head's going to explode or I'm going to fire you on the spot and throw you out the window because I'm at my question limit, right? So it's sort of like balancing. Questions are fine, but thinking of context, thinking of what's relevant right now, have I been listening, etc. So moderating your questions. You can lose asking the wrong question at the wrong time or too many of them. You can lose the room.
Yeah.
And you don't want to lose the room. That room could be your peers or board level, senior leaders. That room could be the teams or the org, or it could be both.
And if you've been listening to us for long enough, you have likely heard the story that I've told where I've had a very strong technical leader within a group, a Scrum team, and they always had all the answers. So I pull them aside and say, hey, listen, I need you to not have all the answers. So you are not allowed to speak in declarative statements. You are only allowed to ask questions. And so maybe folks have misconstrued that and like, oh, well, that's the answer if I just ask questions. No, that's not it. That's a momentary thing where we're trying to change the behavior and enable the rest of the team to speak up because the knowledge and experience and just frequency of speaking up of that person has shut everybody else down, not with intent or not with purpose. It just kind of happened. So now you have to reframe and think about how you're a part of this group. But I too have seen, especially in the agile coaching realm where it is just question after question. And ultimately, what people are thinking on the other side of the table is like, what are you after? Just like, can you tell me what you're trying to get to instead of like
Exactly.
dragging me through this 1,000 questions where I eventually wander into and stumble into the thing you want me to get to? Like, just say it. Like, I'm paying you because I know you're an expert here. Help me get there. Let's get there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's another, I just want to, yes, and it, Josh. There's this, instead of questions and trying to get people to get to where you are, just be declarative and say, I think this, or I think we need to do this. And then maybe the follow-up question, yeah, how does everyone feel about that?
Right.
But you're not, so maybe another part of the anti-pattern is you're asking questions to guide folks to an outcome. Don't do that. But folks I think there's this general thing that we think we're being subtle. My wife is Diane, bless her heart. She thinks very often she's being subtle with me. She's hinting around and stuff, right? And from her perspective, she's like, Bob doesn't know what I'm doing. I know in her head, she's like, I'm being so subtle. I'm just guiding him. But the answer is Bob knows exactly what she's doing. Bob figured it out like 20 minutes ago. And Bob would prefer that you just tell me what to do or what you want me to do. Now, I may not do it, but let's just move to clarity. And so, and I think a lot of folks think that they're being much more subtle than they are. Groups are smart. Your your leaders, your peers are smart. Ask questions when it's real and relevant, and don't. And be declarative when you need to be.
Yeah, questions are a very useful tool. But what Bob and I are talking through is there are often leaders where that's the only tool, right? And you've heard the saying of, carpenter walks around, everything's a nail because they only have a hammer, right? And so working as a leader, when you only have a hammer and you don't have other tools, that is not going to be effective leadership. And that is going to create struggles for you and your team and your organization. So make sure that you understand there's a time where Bob and I are working through something and Bob is coaching me on something. And there's a time where Bob doesn't just blurt out the answer. Bob is smart enough to figure out the nuance and decide, I think the right thing to do is, let me just tell Josh, you have to get, here's a classic example. Josh, you have to get out of those retrospectives. That's a legendary thing we've talked about a bunch of times. Josh, get out of the retrospectives. Bob knew it wasn't right to drag me through 1,000 questions. Now, there have been times where I've been talking about something and Bob has asked a question and I've stopped and thought, damn it, he's right. So Bob knows there's a time where Josh, stop. I'm just going to give you the answer here. This is what you need to do. Trust me on this one. Or, Josh, let's think about this. Let's look at it from a different angle. What do you think about X, Y, and Z? And then that gets the wheels turning. So do not use questions as the hammer. And if you are, I ask you, maybe you are, you don't even do it. So hit the pause button right now and think about the last 10 coaching moments you've had with your team. What tools have you been using? I hope it's not all questions.
I like that idea, Josh. Is everyone, Metacasters, we try to, we talk about things and then we try to bring it to practical application or what you can do. That's something you can and should do. Would highly recommend it. Before you do anything from this episode, just use it as impetus to reflect on your questioning. Go back a bit. Other jobs, other teams, other roles, etc., and just consider it. And not, I don't think we're talking about making major adjustments. You're all good leaders, but we're talking about maybe making it's self-awareness. So be questioning, be interaction, self-aware, reflect on what you've historically done, and then if there's some adjustments you want to make, then be aware of that, be intentional about it, and try to make some of those adjustments.
Agreed. And if you're not sure what to do, reach out. Bob and I are happy to help. We're here. You know how to get a hold of us.
Well, I don't know about that though, Josh. I don't know if I want to handle any questions. So I'm a little bit questioned out right now.
Well played.
Yeah, I was trying. Hey, everyone, I think we've nailed it. So, from beautiful downtown Cary, North Carolina,
And beautiful downtown Fuquay-Varina, North Carolina.
I'm Bob. Ask me a question, Galen.
And I'm Josh. Don't ask me too many questions. Anderson.
Shake.
And bake.
Take care, y'all.